that myth about?
No, okay, look, Mike was chewing some hubba bubba over here like he's a 6-year-old at a baseball game, and I told him spit that shit out before we start recording. And I see him going to swallow it. He's choking it down like a llama. And I'm like, the trash can is a meter away. Why don't you go to the trash can? And he says, oh, I swallow all my gum. What?
But what are you talking about, dude? It just passes right through you. You don't digest it, but it passes through you.
I guess, like, I wish I had more of an argument against this, you know? Because somehow I just inherently know it's wrong to swallow gum. But I can't argue
Yeah, because
why.
you've been spoon-fed this fucking thing. It balls up in your stomach.
What a weird...
I would have been dead decades ago.
What a weird thing to have a conspiracy theory on. You've been spoon-fed a lie, man. Like, all right, I don't think it balls up in your stomach, but a wad of gum being pushed out your butthole can't be what evolution intended.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. Dude... Fuck it, you're pushing shit out your asshole all the time.
Just because it
all
works doesn't mean you can do it.
Why?
How many people are swallowing their gum out there? Maybe there's a secret society, man. Maybe you could start like a website for these people or something.
Well, look, we had an au pair who was really shitty to me one day, and I asked why, and she's like, "Well, you just opened your window and spit out that gum on the car the car." And I'm like, yeah, so fucking what? She's like, that's littering. And I'm like, what? Turns out it is not biodegradable.
Gum.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
The gum is petrol-based.
Okay.
Right? It is. It's basically made from fossil fuels. It's perfectly fine to chew on, but it doesn't really biodegrade. And I thought to myself, yeah, that might be true. But if it's landing on the street, I kind of feel like I'm doing my part to patch up cracks then.
Yeah.
Because that shit is being driven over and the cracks are being filled in. If everybody just spit out their gum on the street, we would have
a utopia.
We would have a utopia of like this petrol hydrophobic streets, you know, because the gum's not going through it then.
Gross.
If it's not biodegradable, that means that, or not the gum's not going through, the water isn't penetrating through the gum, which means that you're basically waterproofing the fucking streets.
Seems like a pretty bad idea for oil slicks. You know what? I'm really proud of Seattle and the city I came from, but one of the grossest tourist attractions in Seattle is the bubblegum wall. Do you know about this?
That sounds fucking...
It's worse. In South Seattle, there's this alley, and it's exactly what it sounds like. People just chew bubble gum and stick it on the wall. But it's such a tourist attraction that tourists come, they'll buy a pack of gum, they'll put it in their mouth, they'll chew up a huge wad of gum, like to the size of a baseball, and they'll throw it like high up on the wall. So it's not just like eye level. It's 20 feet of gum on the wall. And I remember one time I was working in South Seattle, and I was down like on Alaskan Way by the water, and I smelt like peppermint and mint. And I was like, that's like someone's making cotton candy. I go and I look, and they were pressure washing it off. And I remember, like, I turned the corner just as this huge, like, 10-foot sheet of like 6 inches thick of gum just rolled down and just platted down. And then, maybe 2 months later, it was full of wall again. And it's like to walk down that alley and see it, it's somehow artistic because it's so colorful and people make an effort to get colorful gum, but it's fucking gross. And it's like, why?
Dude,
Why
if
Seattle?
Someone would have told me that is actually where the coronavirus evolved, is on that wall through the amalgamation of all the fucking viruses and bacteria that were in people's saliva, that it made this mutant freak virus, I would believe that. Because that's gross. That's fucking gross, dude.
Yeah, man. I mean,
that's not something to be.
That's like something from a movie. Like it all like, I don't know, merges together.
That's some serious hipster shit. You know that?
How does that even get started? You know, like the locks on bridges, I understand, but it's like someone stuck their gum on the wall, and the next person came by, and they were like, "Yeah." And people will like draw like hearts and initials and shit.
Well, yeah, but that's okay. So that's the weird thing. Like that it spontaneously sort of happened is fascinating and awesome. That's actually culture. You wouldn't say that like the bubblegum wall is culture, but it is. It's just sort of like the spontaneous creation of a bunch of different people happening, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, everybody's been putting their gum on this wall. But whenever it becomes a tourist attraction and people are like, yeah, I put my gum
then
on
it becomes
the
fucking
wall.
lame. Like I remember San Francisco when I was like a teenager was really fucking fun, and now it fucking sucks. I don't think you've ever been to the West Coast, have
I've
you?
never been to the West Coast.
San Francisco, like, because they got like the streetcar, you know,
Yeah.
they got the Lombardi Street, which is like this, all these curves, like this,
Zigzaggy.
yeah. They got the Fisherman's Wharf, and there's all this shit that used to be like legitimately fun back in the day, but these days it's just shit, and it was ruined by tourists. And they put a Ferris wheel in Seattle. Whenever you put a Ferris wheel in a city, that's when it gets fucking ruined.
Well, London has a Ferris wheel.
Yeah, and it fucking sucks. London sucks. I've been in London a few times. And every time I go, you can't see shit because it's under construction.
Dude, you know
every time, man.
Did you know the steepest street in the world is in Pittsburgh?
Really?
The steepest street, the one with the greatest degree of slope
Yeah.
that just goes straight.
Where?
I can't remember the name of it. I know I'm a terrible Pittsburgher.
I remember some steep ass streets out there,
Dude, and it's scary. It is. I've gone down it before. It is honest to God scary.
Yeah.
I would never buy a house on that. I might buy a house on that street just for the novelty of it.
Yeah.
But if you are driving an old manual transmission car and you're not amazing at it, you are fucked. It's
Yeah.
terrible. The thing is, actually, if you know how to drive it, you can use the lower gears to kind of ease your way down the street. But it's fucking
down.
crazy. and the Pittsburghers weren't smart enough to do what they did in San Francisco and build one that goes back and forth, back and forth. That would have been the smart move.
Now,
but they're like,
Seattle-
fuck it. Whoop.
Seattle is also very, very hilly, and I remember it just closing the fuck down. Anytime it snows, there's always every year there's a YouTube compilation of some bus like coming over the crest of like Queen Anne Hill, and like then it starts to go. It's just like it's fucked, you know.
Yep.
It slides. Look, Mike and I took a leave of absence here for a couple weeks, and we should explain to y'all what that was.
We had some interesting answers on Instagram about what it was. Everybody thinks we're gay.
Yeah.
There was like, oh, did Mike's cock get stuck in Jared's asshole for a long time? It was like there were some seriously gay posts
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, I mean, guilty as charged. Look, I mean, well, how would they not think that? No, Mike and I, we had a little bit of a corona outbreak here at SDAO, which happens. No, it does. It's frustrating because I actually was surprisingly cautious throughout corona. I saw
Me too.
I
tried.
I saw maybe 2 or 3 people, but you have to go out there. You know, and Mike and I, we actually do this podcast. Actually, funnily enough, we do this at like a what's it called? Like socially distanced. Like we actually sit far away from each other, but it fucking happens. And so
But I yell and spit.
Yeah. That's
So
the thing.
that's probably, and it probably, I got to say, because one of my colleagues got it also. I'm now convinced terribly that he got it from me and that I'm the source of all this.
Just
and I'm
spitting.
convinced it came from the kids. That Jack has contact with.
Oh, really?
I'm convinced of it.
Yeah.
By the way, on the PCR test that we got,
Yeah.
did you see on your PCR test it had like a number, like it put a number with your test that actually says how far along you were in it?
No,
right?
I think I got a phone call. I didn't really get a printout.
You didn't get. Oh, okay. See, mine had like there was a lab, and you could like get an actual official printout.
Okay.
And you could see on it that by the time I was tested, was farther along in the process than my colleague was.
Oh,
so
really?
I was able to tell. I got him sick.
I see. Oh no, I you know, in Germany, the what's amazing is if you have health insurance, you'll get taken care of. But private insurance is faster than public insurance. I have public insurance, and so I went to a small city, and I kind of used connections to get like a doctor to do it as like a favor to me.
Oh, okay, cool.
You know, and so I got like a personal phone call. Like they called me, they were like, "Hey, man." So I didn't get all the stats.
Well, you got
and
it from the
shit.
Gesundheitsamt also, right? They called you,
They sent me a letter. Yeah.
but they didn't call you.
No.
So they
My
called me.
shit was backwards.
So like everybody talks about like, yeah, Germany is the model of efficiency. Nope. Not all the time. Not all the fucking time. let me tell you what my experience was with the Gesundheitsamt, the official fucking office trying to get this pandemic under control, right? I got a call from a number I didn't know. So I called it back, and I was kind of expecting, this must be something about my corona. I could tell that I had it because I lost my smell, which we can get into that if you want to. Fascinating shit.
I don't want to talk too much about it.
Well, okay, we don't have to talk too much about it.
We got a big show today.
Anyway, but I got so I called them back, and I'm like, did somebody call me? And they're like, yeah, probably, but you have to be patient. They'll call you back, and we're shitty about it.
Yeah.
Snotty and shitty. Finally, they called me back, and it was this woman, and she says, yeah, so you have corona. Do you have your colleague's contact information? I'm like, no, and I didn't want to give it to him because it's like, you can get that. That's not me. You know, that's not up to me to give. As a matter of fact, I'm not allowed to in Germany. They care about Datenschutz.
Yeah,
like
data protection here is really big.
They're like, okay, well, now you have to stay in 14 days quarantine. And that was the end of the conversation. They didn't even call the work, the theater where I work at. They didn't let them know. They found out through me, which seems like that should be something that they're doing in attempt to sort of control the spread of it. But the thing that got me was they gave me zero information. Like, all right, so if you start experiencing this, you should go to the hospital. Like nothing like that. They didn't even give me a fucking link to go to. Everything I learned about it, I learned on my own. Period.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of got disillusioned too a bit with Germany in the process because the thing I've kind of learned throughout the pandemic in general is that if the rule is already in existence in Germany, people know what to do, they'll follow it.
Right.
You know, everyone talks about how many rules there are in Germany and blah, blah, blah. And to a point, that's true. But the invention of new rules does not happen fast.
Yeah.
And that's the problem you see right now with vaccinations. It's like making a new thing. And so, you know, the Gesundheitsamt like existed, you know, but the ability to actually handle this new problem, I felt the same way. It was like there was this illusion of like, oh, look, nobody worry. You can get a test, and then like the Gesundheitsamt, they'll call you, they'll talk to you, like it'll be fine. But then it was just like, you're on your own.
Yeah.
You know?
You're totally on your fucking own.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I remember it's pretty easy to find. You can do a thing with Obama giving a speech and saying like, look, I've been informed by all of the officials that are in my cabinet and everything that we are not at all prepared for any sort of pandemic. That we don't have anything set up. We don't like that. That would be something that we need to worry about. And he gave a speech talking about it, and it was like, yeah, I guess that was true.
Yeah,
because no one knew what the fuck to do.
Yeah. But like, so I mean, I'm gonna give my little bit, and then I guess I'll be done talking about it. But I've been very healthy my whole life. I have a very good immune system. I'm blessed with that. And I think you're kind of the same. You rarely get sick, but
not very often. No.
At least my experience with the illness was that it fucking sucked. And if I was old or had any sort of pre-existing conditions, it would have been very serious, you know? And so all I want to put out in the world is people should be taking it seriously, and people should be taking precautions.
Absolutely.
I could feel in my body as a 33-year-old healthy, like active, like male and all this shit that I was like, if I was fucking 55 years old, this shit would be really bad.
Yeah.
You know?
But let me put another thing out there because this is actually interesting to demonstrate to people why you have to listen to educated people.
Yeah, right.
In the court of law, an eyewitness is like the highest form of evidence, right? When it comes to science, eyewitness or anecdotal evidence is the least reliable thing.
You mean like what I just said?
Well, not only what you just said, but let me counter it.
Yeah.
I basically didn't have any symptoms. The only, like, I didn't really cough.
Yeah.
I didn't really have a headache, maybe like a light one. But the coughing especially, every single cold I've ever had worse coughing. Every single one.
Right.
I didn't experience really anything. I didn't feel anything different with my lungs. The only thing that was different was my sense of smell, which took away my sense of taste also, which, by the way, if you guys want to learn about that, go to my Instagram page. I made a video about it. I'm not going to go through the whole thing there, but it's fascinating what I learned about smell and taste. But if anecdotal evidence were something to be taken seriously, you could hear me and say, don't worry about it. It's nothing. I didn't even cough hard. I didn't even have any symptoms. But that's the thing. Science and something like a virus, you need to take into account the amalgamation of all the different data that is collected. So I'm just one part. From one individual part, you can't really tell anything about the severity of the illness because you said it sucked, but there are people for whom it really sucks, right? And it is all of these data points. When you're able to collect them and put them together, that is when you learn something. You don't really learn something from one individual thing. So you can hear me sit here and say, yeah, my corona didn't suck, and it really didn't.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really tell you anything about the virus.
Yeah. But I mean, at the same point, there is something about if it is bad for somebody, then it does exist that it could be. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like
but
in that sense, it's not completely equal because like having had no symptoms, like argues the side of like, I don't know, it's not that serious. But if one person has a very hard time with it, then it's more of like you have to look at it and say, like we have to collect all the data points because it could be bad.
Yeah,
except
except for instance, there are vaccine like people sometimes, rarely by the way, have a negative side effect to something like the MMR vaccine, right?
Yeah, sure.
By the way, not autism. That doesn't happen. It has nothing to do with it. But rarely they have a bad reaction, right? Looking at the bad reaction and saying, oh, yeah, then this is a dangerous vaccine does not take into account how rare that actually is.
Yeah.
Now, I could say, again, when you have a large amount of data points and you can actually graph them and see what the severity of what the durchschnittlich, the average severity of a thing like the coronavirus is, then you can actually have some sort of comprehensive view. But for me to say like panic and set the world on fire because somebody had a bad because those people have bad reactions is not necessarily a logical or reasonable reaction, but somebody's doing the exact same thing because somebody saying, oh, you shouldn't worry about it at all because I didn't have those symptoms is also not a reasonable reaction.
Yeah.
It's not logical. So you have to listen to these people who actually study it because I don't know anything.
Yeah.
You don't know anything compared to these immunologists or these people, virologists, right? Who know what a virus like this can do, who actually have, because the other thing is a 2% mortality rate, which is about what the coronavirus seems to be pulling out at. It doesn't seem that extreme, but it is.
Yeah.
Dude, we have to get on to the topic.
Yeah, I know. So look, so Mike and I, we did our quarantine. We took care of ourselves. We got negative test results, and then we came back to work. So sorry for the delay, but it's the world we live in.
You can fucking deal with it.
Yes. So today we decided to talk about Lord of the Rings. Just because it's such an interesting thing, a big part of what we do as opera singers are these stories, looking at history in general and stuff like that. And you got to talk about Lord of the Rings as the book, but also cinematically, the film that came out of it was almost as influential in the film world as the book itself was. And the music that came with that movie, equally one of the most influential cinematic musical things in history. And so just this lineage of a book that was so influential, that created a film that was equally influential, like in the film world, that then spawned the music is like just something you got to fucking talk about, you know?
I think so. And everybody, there are very few people who don't like it. I mean, there are some people who don't like the adaptation of the movies, or of the books to the movies, but they still like the thematic material and everything. Everybody likes wizards and elves and
it's
shit
kind of
like
always
that.
like that though, like they always say, like, you know, nobody hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans, you know? It's like Lord of the Rings is sometimes the same. Anything that has a book, you know?
Oh, yeah. People lose their shit
Nobody
over
hates
it.
Lord of the Rings like Lord of the Rings fans is probably also true. But I've never read the books, I got to say.
Neither
be
have I.
honest. Yeah, because Mike and I, we talked about this, we want, like, Lord of the Rings is one of those subjects that is so... You somehow know it's a massive thing to talk about, but if you want to know about anything about the creation of the languages, Tolkien's life, any of the lore of Lord of the Rings, each tidbit, which there's a base, like almost an infinite amount of stuff you could dig into. Each thing has hours and hours and hours of expert documentation, books about just like this one thing.
It is so daunting.
Yeah.
Look, Jared and I decided, all right, for this one, we're going to split up the tasks, right? And I got the task of learning something about these fucking books and the stories. Oh my fucking God, dude.
Yeah.
Every tree that the Valar liked, they name them and they have backstories. The trees of the characters that nobody has ever heard of have backstories, for God's sake.
Well, and one of the reasons that this thing is so fucking popular, Lord of the Rings, is because, like, the connections between this world that doesn't fucking exist, you can almost validate it, cross-reference it from other books and stuff like that in the same way that real history exists.
More so, dude. Oftentimes, history is based on this is what it said in a book that we know might have existed at one point but doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's a lot of history. That's a lot of what we know about history, and that's not what it's like in the. I mean, there are so many there are so many pages of information that Tolkien wrote about this in the Silmarillion, and the history of this and the history of that, and I mean everything. Every character is basically fleshed out.
Yeah,
I mean it's too much, and it makes me think to myself, man, there is nothing in the world. I'm not sure if there is a person in the world who created an entire other universe so thoroughly like Tolkien created that one. I think it might be.
I'm not sure. I mean, because something that's incredible about it, too, is like the languages. I'm very interested in languages, right? And all languages, over time, go through similar changes. And it's one of the things that defines, is something a language or not? We did a whole podcast about, like, is music a language, And one of the things that assigns, so there's changes that happen. There's, like, this vowel shift in all languages, for instance, just one aspect of hundreds you could talk about, in that vowels over time become brighter.
Right.
So they go to the front of the mouth, right? And then like the ones at the front kind of like switch and come back. And there's just this vowel shift of this. And Tolkien, he was someone that spoke Latin. He spoke Latin. He was like really a devout Catholic, and he would go to church and he would try to do the whole thing in Latin and stuff like that. And when he created these languages, he didn't just make up words. Right? He would look at like which culture of this made-up world that he created is older, and so they would have these qualities to their language. And over time, if you look at languages of the world, these shifts happen. So he would put these vowel shifts, these consonances that drop.
Yeah.
In English we have words like stop, and in Old English it was like stoppin'. I don't know if that's true, but in German you have these en.
Sounds good.
But most words are like that. That's why you have drink, drank, drunk.
Right.
But in German you have like trink, tank, getrunken. And getrunken we lost the g over time. Trunken, you lost the en over time. Trunk, t's become d's in languages over time. They dentalize t drunk. Right, so that's how this development happened. So he looked at these, and so he's like, the elves are older than this culture, so the language would have progressed like this. So when I create a word for this culture, I will take into account the development of languages in this imaginary world.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That's just one aspect of languages that he did, and that's that level of detail. I don't know where else I've seen that.
Like I was thinking about this whenever I was learning about. So I have a whole thing, like you gave me. I picked just what I had to pick just one thing to talk about, right?
Yeah.
So I learned a lot about that, and I wanted to give it because most people who are familiar with the Lord of the Rings don't know anything about this sort of history that I want to tell you about. But the first thing that I thought when I was learning about it is, when did he think of, like, at what point in the day did he use to think about these things? Did he use to create these things? Was it that he was taking a shit and he thought, oh yeah, this subset of this race has to be this and this and this? Like, was he constantly thinking about it?
I think he was. It took him 12 years
But that's no time. That's
a big chunk of life.
I know, but that's no time for how much material there is. How did he do it? He must have been doing it every day, all day.
Well, it was a part of his personality, you know? I mean, like, he, like, some stories his kids and stuff would tell, which he was old. I think he died at, like, 101. He was born in the late 19th century, you know, like, I can't remember exactly when, but he lived until, like, the 70s, I think, or something like that, you know? And that's cool that you have something that's as influential to literature as some other stuff, and the guy was still alive where you could record him and stuff like that. But they would tell these stories about how he would always create children's stories for them, or he created this whole thing of Santa Claus, and he would pay the postman to deliver letters with like the North Pole stamped on it. And so I think he was kind of a person that just liked to have these fantasy worlds and stuff like that. So I think it was probably such a part of his personality.
But that's a level,
always going on.
That's a level of creativeness that I can't even grasp.
It was definitely all intentional.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
sure.
Some people will write it off. It's like as a singer, when someone's like, "Oh, you're so talented," it's like, "Fuck you! I worked hard for this." You know?
Yeah, but
it's like he didn't just like magically create this mystical world.
No, totally not. But there must be. I mean, for this level, which this isn't just writing.
No, you have to have a genius mind, but also you have to apply it correctly. You know what I mean? But I'll plug it real quick. In our secret sponsor podcast today, we're going to talk about the music of Lord of the Rings,
right.
You know, and how Howard Shore captured each of these little worlds and stuff like that. Right. You know, it was all there in this that Tolkien created, because it wasn't. It's just like, God, to create the hobbits and the Shire and all the culture that goes with it is just insane in itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's such a depth to all this stuff. And I mean, it's funny because he created this fantasy world, but when you create a fantasy world, you can't hide aspects of yourself. You know, Tolkien, he was hardcore Catholic. He like loved Latin and stuff like that. Yeah. And although the story doesn't have any sort of Catholic message, the values.
It does. There are some.
Well, I don't think there's direct Catholic message as much as the values that the church teaches.
Sure.
If you believe in those values, you can't hide them from your writing. Like, something about Tolkien is he fucking hated machines, right? And he said a lot that like the Ring and stuff was machines, because when he was alive at the turn of the 19th century into the 20th century, it's like machines and cars being invented and planes and phones were happening and trains and stuff like that. And he talked a lot about these beautiful like countrysides with like a train fucking through it, and stuff like that.
And evil was always associated with the destruction of nature, like when Saruman at Isengard he removed all of the trees and started industrializing there. He basically, you're absolutely right. He would take he would have the orcs use machines to reshape the landscape, and he actually did that afterwards. After he lost the whole fucking war and Sauron was defeated. Do you know he ended up in the Shire? Did you know about this?
No.
Okay, so after this, there's a whole postlude in the Lord of the Rings that is not included at all, where Saruman, the wizard that Gandalf fought against, ends up with Wormtongue, the guy who was in Rohan and fucking with the king's mind. Wormtongue was Saruman's servant. And they ended up in the Shire, and in the area around the Shire started industrializing that also. But he was like a weak fucking old man, and Wormtongue also ended up killing him at the end of the Lord of the Rings. Just because, I don't know, because they're both fucked up and greedy and with power and everything. But dude, it's interesting. I bring that up only because that Saruman was corrupted all the way to the end, and he used this view of industrialization as being a bad thing and being a thing that destroyed. But that's what's
interesting about these people. When you look at them, it's like a certain amount of it is intentionally putting it to a story, but there's a certain amount of creating something like that where it's like, that's just your worldview. You believe that to be true. You know what I mean? And you can't hide aspects of yourself in music you write or in stories you tell.
You could try, but you would probably be unsuccessful.
It would be very unauthentic then.
Yeah,
you know?
it would come across maybe as not authentic.
But what's something that's so cool about these stories is if you create a character, to keep the authenticity of a character or something throughout a story, La Boheme, whatever, is extremely difficult. To create a person, but to create a mythical world that has its own laws and rules, and then never to break those rules, that's almost impossible.
Yeah.
And that's something that's so that's so incredible what he did, is because he created this world, and everything that's introduced, the Ents, the orcs, the wizards and stuff, never is there something where you're like, come on, man. Like, within the rules and the laws that govern this mythical world, everything that happens is like, yeah, that makes sense within the laws of this world. But a lot of people, when they write a story, they'll get into a hole or something. That's like, it's very easy just to create an exception to the laws you've already created, or to create some sort of like new rule or something. But to create this, because we have laws of physics, we have laws in the world, there's humanity, there's psychology, and you can't escape these. And so everything that we do in real life is governed and bound by these rules. And when you create a mythical world, it's so easy to just break the rules sometimes.
Well, it's funny
And he
because
doesn't do it.
No, he doesn't do it, but that's because the entire other world, besides when they talk about going to the west, like at the end when the elves go to the west, that's basically the only mention of another, like the only hint of another world. I'd like to, if you would like to hear it, tell you some about that other world, right? So, did you know there's a god in The Lord of the Rings?
No.
So there's a god, a creator, who has created this entire world. You will come in your pants when you learn about the creation of Middle Earth. You will come in your fucking pants. This guy's name, and by the way, saying these names... It makes me feel more dorky, more nerdy than I ever. Somehow it gives me a hard-on, but makes that hard-on so useless because I become so much of a nerd. I can't even describe it, dude. So the god, who he actually even calls him like I am, like sort of like in the Bible where he says I am that I am, right?
Yeah.
It's named Eru Ilúvatar,
Nice.
right? And you, for some reason, when you say these names, you have to like roll your fucking R. You can't say Eru Ilúvatar. No way. Eru Ilúvatar.
Yeah,
it's the
good.
only way to fucking do it, right? This is a person who existed in the void, basically an endless expanse of nothingness, and he exists as an all-powerful being, right? Now, he didn't create Middle Earth. He didn't create the world. What he did was he created out of different parts of his mind. He created with his thoughts things called the Ainur, right?
Where do you get this information?
Oh my God. You can't even begin to know the rabbit hole that I've gone down.
Yeah, but I
with
mean,
videos.
but like, I know there's videos and stuff like that, but like, was this then the
This is in the Silmarillion.
Okay.
And also there's a supplementary book which I can't remember the name to right now, but I mean they're as long as the fucking Lord of the Rings, and they're as complicated, and it's the Silmarillion is notoriously difficult to read because there's so much backstory. It's not like an arc thing, like, oh, look how well the story formed over this, that. That's not it. That's more of the Lord of the Rings.
Well, Tolkien always said that Silmarillion was the core of all of it.
Well, yeah, of course. This is why it's like when you start learning about this stuff, it's like, why pay attention to the Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
The Lord of the Rings is really not that big of a deal whenever it comes to this. Okay, so let me get into this, right?
Get into it, man.
So the Ainur, so the Ainur were the creations from Eru Ilúvatar's mind. And they were very different from one another, which is purposeful because he also knew about psychology and also knew that different parts of the brain had different aspects to them. So he wanted that the Ainur all had different aspects to them because they were created from different thoughts, different parts of the brain, right? These parts of the brain these creatures that he made could not speak with one another. Now, the Ainur are basically all of the creations that came from Ilúvatar's mind, But the ones that came at the beginning were then called the Valar, right?
I've heard of that before. Yeah.
Now, this is all really really important because these are the people who couldn't necessarily speak with one another, right? The way he taught them to speak with one another was through music.
Okay, cool.
They all began to sing, and they all started feeling joy and understanding through the singing. They couldn't understand each other yet, but he continued to speak. He continued to teach them these things, right? After a while, they began to be able to communicate with one another. Now, after this went on for a long time, and they all started to sort of gain their own personalities. They had their own personalities, but they were all still subservient and subservient's the wrong word. Sort of reflections or depictions of the mind of Eru Ilúvatar, right? He then sat them down and began to teach them a song, right? And this when they would sing, it was described that their voices sounded like different instruments.
Okay.
Like that some were trumpets, some were trombones, some were violins, and these things began to sing and make incredibly harmonious music together. So much so that the Valar sat in awe of the new form of understanding that they could have, right? They began to sing, but there was one Valar who was the most powerful of all of the Valar, the most talented. And he began to enjoy the sound of his own voice, not for the sake of being a reflection of Eru Ilúvatar, but for the sake that he liked it and wanted to create his own thing. And in doing so, he began to sing a different song that was not in the plan of Eru Ilúvatar and created dissonance in the song.
Nice. Some
that
crunch.
Exactly. There was all kinds of fucking crunch. The person who I learned this from talked about, he liked to think of it as Mozart, and then all of a sudden there was heavy metal, right? Which I think you could depict it classically even crunchier than just heavy metal, because heavy metal is still depending on like...
That's more timbral than
exactly.
actual.
That's timbral than anything. But I feel like if you really wanted to create dissonance, you could do modern music, like 12-tone music that has nothing to do with harmonic basses or anything like that. Some real fucking like
Dark
really
Angels
do
by
it.
Crumb.
Now, Eru Ilúvatar, he laughed at first and then created a new song, but Melkor was the guy's name, right? The
guy that added the crunch.
The crunchy man, right? He then just kept it up, and then that went back and forth for a little bit until Eru Ilúvatar stopped the song completely because he was tired of Melkor making this dissonance, right? So then he brought all of the Valar together and showed them in the void something that wasn't part of the void, but also part of it. Is how it was described, right? And it was a vision of Middle Earth. Middle Earth is a straight creation from the harmonies of the Valar's singing. The Valars are the ones who created the world.
Yeah.
And they created it so that Eru Ilúvatar's two life beings could live there. That was the race of men and the race of elves. Both of those are direct creations of the top lords, Eru Ilúvatar's mind also. And it was their singing that actually created this fucking world, which is fantastic. And it also explains through the song of the Valar the creation of evil. Now, the other Valars, they all loved and appreciated the creation of Eru Ilúvatar of these beings, the elves and the men. But Melkor wasn't having any of that shit.
No.
It basically showed that Eru Ilúvatar was showing favor to these free creations, but Melkor wasn't able to be free. Melkor is the Valar that wanted to rule over these people, over these creations of Eru Ilúvatar, right? This shows you something which is crazy because Sauron in the movies is like, this is the evil. He's a fucking servant of of Melkor. He's not even the main bad guy.
Jesus Christ.
Right? Now, Melkor created some sort of land in Middle Earth, which there were just a couple of times where Eru Ilúvatar, the main guy, intervened in the affairs of Middle Earth. One was the creation of men and elves. One was the destruction of Melkor's sort of reign in Middle Earth, right? The other was, the last two we know, though, from the movies. One was the resurrection of Gandalf, and the other, and this one's really cool, I had no idea about this until today, the other one was he caused Gollum to trip and fall into the lava. It was a direct intervention from the creator of everything that caused him to fall into the fucking lava. Which is fucking nuts. You have no idea about that. And it's actually not in any of the books. It comes from a later writing. And I think it's just like a conversation between people where he talked about how Eru Ilúvatar intervened 4 fucking times, right? There's more to get to. And I have to get to this because this is actually really interesting.
Can we take a break? Like, can I interject?
Yeah,
before you go?
please interject.
What's really cool about the music is, you know, like you look at the Catholic Church and stuff and how important music was.
Absolutely.
Like I said, and like again, I don't know, like some of the stuff you can say is derivative, but it's like everything we do is derivative of the human experience. You can't escape history and human life and stuff like that. And in his life and world at that time, the Catholic Church and like the same music needs to be done in these places. And the idea that music could harbor evil or even identify different beliefs and stuff like that would have been something very strong. And you find you find it in this.
Well, not only that, but you could... Oh, wow, that's interesting. I never really thought of that. Wow, okay, so it was the children of Eru Ilúvatar, the Valar, that sang that and created the world. I remember reading about how polyphony in the church, meaning these motets that were made.
Yeah.
If any of you, first off, I gotta say, if you don't know about it, go listen to as much fucking Palestrina or anything that you can get your hands on, Victoria, anything you can get your hands on.
I think we talked about it in our Notre Dame.
We definitely
podcast,
did, but there's so much music there. You will thank me later for going and doing it.
Good shit.
But one of the things is that the polyphony or the counterpoint that they had was always overlapping.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why that was favored in the church, I read, I don't know if this is right, but I read it and I love it, was that angels were thought to not have lungs. And when they sing, they would not have to breathe.
I see.
So the idea that the overlapping counterpoint of people singing gave the impression that the music just started and continued and there was no real breathing necessary. It's something that I always thought about whenever I was singing that kind of music, because it's like, don't show that you're breathing. That's kind of beside the point. You don't. That goes against the point. You want it to seem like no breath is ever necessary to be taken in those pieces. So when I think of that, these motets were made to sound like angelic music. It kind of sounds like the music of the Valar.
Yeah, sure.
So it could be that he had that in mind when creating that myth of the Valar creating the world.
Yeah. I mean, that would be something he was being exposed to, and
was really into. You said he was really Catholic, which I didn't know actually.
Yeah, he was very Catholic, and like hardcore Latin songs, all that stuff. So yeah, he would have been aware. You know, I just want to interject that. So
no, that's terribly interesting because now that I think about it, that has to be, he has to have been influenced by church music.
Yeah.
In the creation of this creation tale.
It just sounds a lot like how music progressed through religion and becoming secular, and how the secular music was then evil.
I cannot believe I have 2 kids and I know all this shit. No, it doesn't seem like anybody who can talk about the Ilúvatar and Valar and Maya has ever gotten his dick wet ever. But I did. I promise you. I did it. So I'm one of the few who did. Anyway.
But you learned about it post.
That's right. Post dick wetting. So maybe that is the loophole.
Yeah.
Here's one that's going to get you though. All right. also part of the Ainur were a lesser form of the Ainur called the Maiar, right? Now, all of the Valar are accounted for, right? They know all the names, they know what happened to them, everything, right? There were a lot more Maiar, right? There were a certain group of them who ended up in Middle-earth. One of them, which I think probably you guessed, was a servant of Melkor, the Dark Lord. Of course, Sauron is one of these Maiar. Sauron is not like a guy who just got really bad. He comes straight from the discord of the original creation of everything. He's not one of the Valar, right? Because Maiar are described as being the servants and lesser than the Valar, even though they are otherworldly and products of Eru Ilúvatar, right? So he's kind of the guy that took over after Melkor, got defeated in the first battle, in like the first age of Middle-earth or whatever the fucking ages are. Like I said, there's so much more that I can't even begin to cover.
No, I mean, like you could do not only whole like season about it, but you could there probably are podcasts
Definitely.
that are literally seasons and seasons long with hundreds of episodes just about the Lord of the Rings.
How can that be?
It's too massive.
So crazy.
Yeah.
There are other Maiar that made it to Earth, though. Can you guess it? Guess who they might be?
I don't know, man.
Take a guess.
That dude that nobody knows how strong he is. What's that guy's name?
Oh, which one?
I don't know. It's like, what's his fucking name? He walks around. He doesn't give a shit about anything.
Oh, you mean Tom Bombadil?
Yeah.
I'm about to get to that,
All
dude.
right, man, all
God
right.
damn it. So, no one knows. The thing is, nobody knows what Tom Bombadil is.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. I'll get to that. Fuck. Damn it. No, the wizards
Yeah.
are all Maiar. That means Gandalf is actually a Maiar. He's actually... Because you look at those wizards, and what the impression that you get from the movies is they're just dudes. They're just dudes who have been studying wizardry.
Yeah.
Nope. They were sent to Middle-earth specifically by the Valar. They were Maiar. They were means they were servants of the Valar, and the Valar got together and said, "Yeah, there's still discord in Middle-earth because Sauron is still there, right? So we want to help these creations of Eru Ilúvatar." So they chose 5. 5 of these Maiar to go down. Sauron, Radagast the Brown, and Gandalf the Grey were 3 of them. There were actually 2 other wizards which are not even mentioned in the movies at all. 2 blue wizards, right? Which back in the previous ages, and they think those are the wizards that had been there the longest, but they kind of went and helped rebellion in the east, where Sauron was, specifically in those lands, right? But we don't know what fucking happened to them, right? And they all fucking went down, and they were forbidden from matching, like matching fucking Sauron with like might, with like power and magic and everything like that. What they were there to do was be counsel and wisdom for the people of Middle-earth, for the elves and for men, right? But I never fucking knew. I never had any fucking idea that they were that the wizards were anything other than just men. But they came from these other worlds.
I see.
And there's one last interesting thing to say about them. I mean, the whole thing is fucking interesting. But if you see at the end of the movie, you'll see that Gandalf has a ring on, a red ring. That is also one of the rings of power he had the entire time. Nobody ever notices that. And they just show it real quick in the movies. But it's this red ring. And it's one of the reasons why Saruman was so jealous of Gandalf. Gandalf was considered to be the wisest of the Maiar that went down, even though he wasn't the leader. He wasn't the highest. Saruman was.
Right.
But he was also given one of these rings of power to protect.
Damn.
I know, it's fucking crazy. Now, one more thing I just have to say, and I think I might have mentioned it on one of the other podcasts about Tom Bombadil. Did I mention him on one of the other podcasts?
Oh, of course you have. It comes up often in our bar conversations.
Okay, sweet.
You'll be drunk. You'll be like, hey, man.
Bombadil, dude. Bombadil.
You can't bring it up.
Nobody knows. The thing that's cool is he's like the one aberration in everything. He's the one aberrate. Like, nope, the Valar who created this world don't know why Tom Bombadil's there. They don't know who he is. All they know is that he is this powerful motherfucker.
He's like Neo in the Matrix.
Yeah, absolutely, except more fucking powerful. And he can do things. And he, by the way, a lot of his power is connected to music. He sings, and that's how he just fucking controls shit. And the ring never has any effect on him. Like that's the thing in the movie that is a real shame. That before they get to that inn, you know, where they meet, the
prancing pony,
the prancing fucking pony, dude.
Yeah,
you
man.
knew it. Before they get there, they walk through this fucking forest.
Yeah.
And there's where they meet this Tom Bombadil. And, like, he takes the ring. He's like, oh, this is a nice little trinket or something. And he puts it on his finger, doesn't disappear. He can actually make the ring disappear and then reappear. He has complete power over the ring. Doesn't affect him at all. And like I said, nope, he's called the oldest of all. The two oldest people in Middle Earth are considered to be Treebeard and Tom Bombadil. Except they know where Treebeard came from. They don't necessarily know where Tom Bombadil came from. And the one theory which I like, which if I said it again, I'm sorry, people, but I gotta bring it back because it's really that people think. Like, I'm sorry, it's that this whole section is so interesting to me and relevant to our podcast because it all has to do with music. Everything was created by music, and Tom Bombadil is thought to be an overtone, an unintentional overtone of the singing of the Valar in the creation of the world.
That's deep.
And it's just this fucking aberration that's there. It's fucking crazy, dude.
No, I don't think you said that tidbit before. That's a juicy one. That was a tasty one.
Because it's the biggest mystery, and everybody and he Tolkien later talked about Tom Bombadil, and he's like, no, it's absolutely intentional that nobody knows where he comes from. He would never ever tell anybody anything like that because it's one of those mysteries that's meant to be a mystery, which is great because you shouldn't know everything. You know, I think that's really one of the things that makes that for me. That's what makes science so amazing.
Well,
Every
that's also
time
what makes it realistic.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like you have to have these imperfections in characters in the world you create,
right?
Because there's imperfections in our world. There's unanswered mysteries in our world, and if you don't have that in your mythical world, then it's fake. You know? It's like. A good action movie makes you wish the hero could just like fucking beat every bad guy. But if someone really made a movie where that happened, it would be incredibly boring.
Well, and actually, it's funny because now that you mention he was really religious and really Catholic is very interesting because it addresses the main problem that religious people still have to deal with. Why is there evil? Why would God allow evil, right? His answer is that evil... Well, so the devil and Melkor are basically one-for-one comparisons. They both rebelled and wanted their own thing, which I have something against. I have something against this idea that there's something wrong with wanting to do your own thing. That's one of the reasons I departed from religion a while ago was because doing your own thing, having your own desires is somehow frowned upon. And I hate that. I love the individualism of people doing exactly what they want to do. But also in this, it was somehow frowned upon. His explanation, though, for why Eru Ilúvatar allowed Melkor to exist was that Melkor was also part of Melkor was his creation. It's still part of his plan to have that discord exist. Yeah? But then my question would be, so that's basically his explanation as to why evil exists in the world, because evil is also part of God's plan, right? But then my question is, why make him trip in the why make fucking Mime or Gollum trip into the lava? Why do you have to make that happen?
Yeah.
Like some of those things don't necessarily make sense, but that is his explanation as to why evil exists in his world.
What's funny about like Tolkien is like one of the reasons he set out to do Lord of the Rings is because he felt like all these other countries, Nordic countries and like these German countries and stuff, they have all this lore that has to do with their culture and their history and this deep tradition of storytelling. But the history of England was a bit complicated, and there was a lot of French influence. There was then Viking kings and Nordic influence, and then there was English again. And so as a result, English culture, where you and I come from and this stuff, it's like we actually don't have that. Like you kind of like mentioned like Wagner and The Ring, which come from older German stories and stuff like that. And Tolkien set out to create something that could then be English culture. And that was a big part of like why he created the Hobbits. The Hobbits are basically just like countryside British people.
Yeah, absolutely.
The way they drink tea and garden and like how they act and their priorities. It's just the people he grew up with outside of Birmingham, like in the countryside of like England and shit like this. But he managed to create something that kind of like made up for all of that.
Yeah.
The lack of that. And he obviously drew from like Germanic storytelling, but also like Nordic stuff, because that's also English history. That's where we came from. And
totally.
He created something not only because right before him, he would have been aware of like the Brothers Grimm and the people that were going around Germany creating or not creating, but collecting the same stories and stuff like that. And he wanted to create something that was like, on the same level, and he, in a lot of ways, exceeded a lot of that
stuff. He
stuff.
far exceeded anything that the Brothers Grimm did. I mean, this is, except, I don't know, dude. It's so comprehensive and it's so detailed that I don't think there's anything that's ever been created like that in the whole world, and I don't know if anybody will ever give the time and effort to create something like that.
It's like
again.
more detailed than like human history,
Totally, dude.
Well, what's funny is he did such a good like I talked earlier about the language thing, which is like that's one aspect. Like we could talk about, you could trace the lineage of any character, or even a race or a place or like the creation of a world or something like that. You could have conversations and endless conversations about the lineage of each of those fucking things in itself, which is incredibly massive. But the way that he created the framework and the foundation leaves room for so much growth. Because of course, Elvish or whatever these languages he created, you couldn't realistically communicate them because there's not enough of a lexicon. Because why would he create 10,000, 100,000 words to create a fake story? You don't need that.
Right.
But the grammar, and like I said earlier, with this like the like legitimate creation of the sounds of these languages, they're actually, most of them are good enough where you could create more. And a lot of the lineage of characters and people or the creation of the stuff is the same way. Like he created it's so massive what he did. But if like authors wanted to create more with his work, it's set up so well that you could.
Well, okay, so there is...
Because that was, sorry, let me just say,
go for it.
Like that was part of the problem with like Game of Thrones, is because the books are really good, but it is not nearly as fleshed out. And so there is room to take it in a direction that makes no sense. But there's so many, and I kind of alluded to it earlier in our conversation, there's so many rules and laws that govern the world that Tolkien created that you're controlled by those and limited by those enough that even if another person like tried to write something in addition to it, they would probably be able, if they knew the lore well enough and stuff like that, you would be able to create something that fit.
Yeah, you've already got the base. You've already got the groundwork.
Because you can trace it back to everything. It's
Absolutely.
like, it's like trying to create like fake history. You could create fake history really easily.
Because there are an infinite number of possibilities. Like, all you need is a good foundation, and then you can create anything you want within that foundation. I think I would love to see people doing it. I'd love to see more movies. I'd love to see movies from the Silmarillion, something really well done.
I think people will. I mean, like the copyright has to expire, and there'll be a lot of shit, which you have to accept. But what's so cool is there is so much content. You could create a massive cinematic world, like Marvel kind of did, where it's like you could create movies and movies and movies about a single character, a single aspect, a single, like all this old shit. Like it's like it could be an endless franchise,
Well, I'll tell you,
which in some ways is bad. I don't know.
No way. Fuck that. I mean, because look, what I just described to you with the Ainur and Iluvatar and all that shit is something that I don't know if you knew existed. But a lot of people don't know exists. It's already there. I mean, there is so much that you could just create what he did. You could just do that on the side, and you're not creating anything new. And that's good for the next 40, 50, 60 fucking years of creation.
Yeah.
My thing, look, I had a couple other things I wanted to get to, but there's no way we have fucking time.
You can probably bring him up in the secret sponsor.
Yeah, because
We'll have some time
the
there.
cool thing, I'll bring it up. We're about to announce the sponsors here. I'll tell you that I'll inform you guys about the debate about the ring cycle and Tolkien's creation, because a lot of people,
like Wagner versus Lord of the Rings.
a lot of people accuse him of sort of plagiarizing, which it brings up the question of what the fuck is even plagiarizing at this point, because there are a lot of similarities.
Let's save it because
right. So if you guys are interested in finding out about that, that'll be in the secret sponsor thing.
we're in the secret sponsor one today. We're going to talk about Howard Shore. As a person, we'll talk about his life a bit, but also how he handled the music of Lord of the Rings. And so the discussion of Wagner and Tolkien will fold nicely into that discussion on music anyway. So if you are a secret sponsor, then head out to our website, go to our secret sponsor section, and listen to our discussion about the music of Lord of the Rings, Howard Shore, and then also our comparisons to Wagner's Ring. And if you are not a sponsor, then go to our website, click the donate tab, and we have all the information there how to become a sponsor. But today we have 2 new sponsors that we'll announce. You got to do it. I don't got the lung power yet to do that. So get some!
We got 2 actually super fucking English-sounding names today. Robert Watson.
Robert Watson.
Oh, I didn't do it in a Scottish accent. Fuck. Robert Watson. And Nathan Wint. Wint actually kind of sounds like a...
That might be German.
That might be German, but Wint spelled W-I-N-D-T.
Yeah.
I don't know. That kind of sounds like a... Like you
It
catch
could
him
be.
in a thatched roof in the English countryside. Robert Watson and Nathan Wint.
Yeah.
Come on down!
Come on down! They both sound like they run around without shoes on.
Hairy-ass feet.
I'm just going to continue to talk over the music here. Scatta-doo-da-pop, scatta-ba-da-pop.
I knew you could. I knew you would have to jam.
That ending's strong. Look, you guys, thanks for sponsoring
Thank
us
you,
today.
guys.
Bit low energy here on these secret sponsors, but
I gotta
Robert,
confess, I know Nathan Wint. He went to school with me. I haven't talked to him for years and years and years.
Oh, yeah?
But he went to CCM with me.
I gotta confess, I know Robert Watson.
Oh, do ya?
Yeah, we studied together back at the Institute for Young Dramatic Voices back in
See?
the day. I've known him for like
Thanks, guys.
15 years or something by
Amazing.
now. Anyway, so hey, it's always good when your friends can support what you're doing. So really excited that the both of you are listening to the show. Thanks so much that you support us with with kind words, but also with your bank account. But you always get something back for your money. So for those of you that don't know, we always do a parallel podcast. So we try our best to do a similar theme. So like today, talked about Lord of the Rings a little bit. This podcast is going to talk about the music of Lord of the Rings the next podcast. Join us on Patreon if you want to be a part of that. We also do live streams. We do we're on quarterly live streams at the moment, but the internet's fucking out at the studio today. So we're working on getting better internet down here in the basement so that we can up, our live streams and stuff like that. So we are constantly working on improving the quality of the podcasts and the extras. If you want to be a part of helping that to grow, then please sponsor us. Or if you just want to fucking experience and see that shit, then sponsor us and we try to give you something back for your money. So everybody, thank you so much for listening. We'll do another podcast here in 2 weeks. Take care of yourselves.
Keep it secret. Keep it safe, people.
Keep it secret and share the load.